All right, I think we're ready.
Awesome. And you all can see a PowerPoint slide. Cool. So thank you for joining and sorry about the rescheduling, but I'm excited to talk with you all tonight about highlighting volunteerism. And I like to start off everything I ever talk about with the fact that you all are probably going to hear a lot of information you already know, but you might pick up a nugget that you didn't know about or think about it in a way that you hadn't before. And that's a win to me because I'm talking all about your professional persona today. That's what I like to call it anyway. And I'll get into what I mean by that. And when you think about your professional identity, there's so many different ways that you can interpret that. So maybe some of the stuff that you're hearing will be a repeat or a remix, but hopefully you pick up one nugget that you can take away. And I'd love at the end for there to be any discussion or questions related to what I'm sharing so that we can all learn from each other, because I'm certainly not, the expert in all areas when it comes to volunteering. But in case you don't know who I am, my name's Danielle Dalton. I'm also known as Dee around these parts. I am joining you from my home in Concord, New Hampshire, where I live with my boyfriend and my dog, Brody, who you might hear barking in the background. Um, I've worked at SNHU since 2013, but I also went to SNHU on campus as an undergrad student starting in 2008. So I've been around for a while in a couple different areas. For full-time positions, I've worked in academic advising, but I moved to career services probably 3 years into my career at SNHU, and that's where I spent the longest time in individual contributor roles. So I worked with a lot of students and alumni as a career advisor, an internship specialist, and then eventually a team lead, helping people work through their career goals. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you today is from that learning experience, and then also through hiring people when I was a team lead, and also now in my position as a curriculum designer. I'm going to share things that I look for as a hiring manager when I'm able to have the opportunity to be doing that in my job. So a little over a year ago, I became a curriculum designer. So a little bit different than the student experience, but I'm still an adjunct instructor. So all the time in the classroom, we're talking about how your career goals relate to the program and all those different things. Prior to SNHU, I worked for Big Brothers Big Sisters, which at the time was regionally focused in the greater Manchester area. And that's where my community-based understanding and learning how to incorporate this into your professional identity really started for me. In that work professionally, I understood how things were coming together. So in addition to that, I am also a volunteer board of trustees for a school in Manchester called Mill Falls. I'm a member of an organization called the Junior Service League in Concord, which is similar to like a Kiwanis or a 4-H club. But our mission is specifically focused on helping organizations that help women and families. I am a studio manager at an indoor fitness space called Strive in Concord. And if anyone would like to come take a class, let me know. Um, and all of this to say, not about my busy calendar, but just to get a sense of how I've incorporated all these experiences and created my own professional identity using all of those experiences. Oh, yes, Kelly. Kelly knows about Strive. A lot of the pictures you're seeing right now are from Global Days of Service, which I hope everyone is super familiar with. Happy Global Days of Service 2023. We're in the thick of it right now. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But all of this was just to say who I am and why I feel like I can talk about this and hopefully give you some information on your own volunteerism. So what is the current state of civic participation, aka fancy way to say volunteering? So in 2013, Gallup did a poll and 65% of Americans said that they were able to volunteer their time to a charity. And then 83% said they could donate money. So when you think about giving back, those are the two biggest pillars, time and money. And sometimes those things are correlated, but typically it falls into those two buckets. Fast forward to 2021, so pandemic times, and only about half of Americans could say that they volunteered in the last year, but 81% were able to donate money. So it's interesting that while people tended to give less of their physical time, probably because of the pandemic, donation rates kind of stayed the same. I believe economically, with what we're experiencing now in 2023, there will likely be a decrease in the ability of those donating parties. Um, there's no doubt that the pandemic has changed things. Organizations' needs have shifted. People are isolating more. There's budgeted dollars in different places now. So organizations need to completely rethink their volunteer recruitment and development strategies. And if any of you work for a nonprofit, you know that. But there still remains a need for the physical volunteer. And when I say physical, I don't necessarily always mean in person. There are a lot of virtual experiences also. But that is going to be a tried and true way of our society, I believe, moving forward, no matter pandemic or not. So I'm likely speaking to a group of people, or if you're watching this recording, a group of people who have volunteered in the past year. You would probably fall into that 53% bucket I was talking about. But for all the work that you put into the community, let's make sure that that work is also doing something for you. Altruism has a tremendous impact on the individual, which seems like an oxymoron. But when you're in a healthy place mentally, physically, and financially, which can all be factors within your career, then you're likely going to have a higher capacity for being able to donate and volunteer for organizations over time. So today we're going to talk about some tools on how to highlight volunteerism and some types of ways to incorporate it into your professional persona that you might not have thought about before. So why volunteer? There are many reasons why people volunteer, and these will come as no surprise, but just to level set, likely that good feeling to light you up, to fill your cup. The second reason could be to do something completely different than your current position. Bringing up Strive again, although that's a part-time job that I have, it is completely different than my world at SNHU. So that kind of lights me up in a different way. You might have the opportunity to use volunteer time off or some other specified time off to volunteer, which is another great reason to volunteer. You might have just moved to a new area, or you want to meet new people. You might want to experience someone else's life experience. So one of the most illuminating things that I've done is work with the Friendly Kitchen in Concord, which is a food bank that volunteers like myself would go and make dinner for 50 to 80 people. And just seeing how that organization supports people from all walks of life with no socioeconomic bounds was really eye-opening for me. So to be able to step into someone else's shoes is a major reason. To learn a new skill. So nonprofits can sometimes be shorthanded and they might need assistance in an area that you don't currently have experience with or can get experience with in your full-time job. So you can learn a new skill. To teach your children or your family values. That's obviously a really big one for people who want to role model these behaviors for their kids. And then community support. Volunteering provides valuable community services, so the more money can be spent on local improvements if people are also focused on volunteering their time to nonprofits, for example. And in case you were curious, the estimated value of a volunteer's time by hour is currently $15.39 per hour. So if you give back for an 8-hour day, times that by 15.39, and that's how much you have kind of given back. And I say that because there was a long period of time when I was a young alumni of SNHU where I could not financially give back the way that I, hope to in the future. But giving my time to certain things was a way that eventually, could be looked at fiscally if you wanted to look at it that way. So integrating volunteer highlights into your professional persona. So this could be for people who are job seeking, but also just kind of keeping yourself up to date with what's going on. It doesn't have to mean that you're searching for work right now, but also challenging yourself to either passively or actively integrate this information into your skill and toolbox. When I say professional persona, I've kind of used that as a catch-all to say everything that encompasses your professional identity. So it could be job seeking materials like your resume, your cover letter. It could also be active parts of the interview process, like filling out your application, having a face-to-face meeting, doing a group interview, anything like that. But it could also be things that you might need to incorporate during salary negotiation or other types of professional development and networking opportunities. I believe there are ways to integrate volunteering into every part of your professional persona. And I think that linking your professional identity with your community-driven mindset is a major win for everyone, basically. So let's get into some specifics. Hopefully that's not too small for everyone, but I'm happy to send this out after. LinkedIn did a survey, and 1/5 of hiring managers, 1 out of 5, said that volunteer experience was a top 3 factor in why they hired a candidate. That kind of surprised me. So it solidifies that there are hiring managers out there that are looking for these factors that differentiate folks. So to me, it says, make sure that's on your resume. I mentioned earlier that I got a job at Big Brothers Big Sisters right out of college. I debriefed with my new boss after that interview, and she explained to me that one of the sections on my resume was calling out to her that I was doing volunteer research and putting together different presentations for conferences. That was not something I got paid to do, but it was a skill set that I got from a volunteer experience. And she said that basically is what got me the job. That differentiated me between the other person that they were looking at, who actually had interned at Big Brothers Big Sisters. So it was enough to kind of push me over the edge, in her opinion. For me, highlighting volunteerism was my first entrance into the workforce. So that's kind of why I'm passionate about this subject. So one tip I'll say is, if you don't already, keep a master resume. So that can be a Word document that is ugly. It can have different fonts, and you don't have to make it perfect, but it's where you dump everything. So every time you do a LinkedIn learning class, every time you do a volunteer event, because these things can add up. The fact that you're in this group, Active Citizens Network, like if you don't have that on your master resume already, please put it on there. It can be long, it can be messy, it can be wordy. It's not something anyone's ever going to see. But when you're putting a resume together for a particular job, you're going to take pieces of that puzzle and you're going to customize and send a resume off for that job that is exactly what they're looking for. So this is the easiest, nothing's easy about this, but easiest way to customize resumes, by having this kind of big document that you dump everything into. Ways you can put this on your actual pretty customized resume would be formatting it exactly like your professional experience section. You can call it all those different things I have on the screen, whatever kind of makes sense for you, and just have that as, a section that you put on your resume. If you don't have a lot of experience in your field, you can also put volunteering as a position that you've had with an organization, especially if it's a long-term volunteer position. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that if you were raising money for a walk, but I would recommend that if you have been a consistent volunteer at a place that you go every Tuesday for the last year, you have responsibilities, you can kind of put that and fold that into your work experience if it's relevant. And then there also might be a way on your resume to present it in terms of a skill. So if you have a skill kind of heading, you would, like I did with the presentation experience, you would then fold under all the experiences that you've held with organizations that relate to that skill. That's a very quick rundown. And if anyone ever wanted help with their resume offline, I'm happy to kind of connect with you and help you there. But that's just kind of a quick way that you could format it when you're customizing resumes. So the second area of opportunity that I see when people interview with me is not providing relevant examples. So when a question is asked, tell me about a time that someone will usually quickly just say, yes, I have experience with that, or, well, I didn't, necessarily have experience in that area. And then they kind of stop. What I believe, and research shows this too, that hiring managers are looking for is a very well-rounded answer that incorporates a specific example from an experience that you've had. So I believe you should keep in your back pocket these experiences like volunteering and community involvement as stories you can tell, just like you do for your full-time job if you have one when you're applying for an interview. Or I'm sorry, applying for a job during an interview. So, for example, there's some questions on the screen that all of these would work with an answer in a volunteer capacity. So, have you worked on a team made of people who've come from different backgrounds? Maybe you don't have that experience in your full-time job, but you have experience with that as a volunteer. Those stories should be as quick in your recall bank as your full-time job, because in my opinion, they're just as important. And you can kind of go down the list. What are some of the ways you've impacted the goals or KPIs of an organization that you volunteered with? All these different ways that you can incorporate this into your interviewing. During virtual interviews, so a lot of people are doing interviews like this, where you have your computer screen and you're talking to one or more people. It's okay to have a Word document open with some bullet points and pointers that you're kind of having in a line with your webcam, so it doesn't look like you're looking over here and reading off a script. But cheat sheets are actually a little bit easier to hide when you're doing virtual interviews now. So in your prep, don't rely on these pointers, but maybe you call out a reminder to yourself. Remember, Big Brothers Big Sisters worked on marketing campaign 2022, something like that. So you can have these stories to recall. Because whenever you hear the phrase, tell me about a time when, you need to give a specific example and fold that into the job that you're applying for. So please know your volunteer experiences can be those stories. So another bucket would be networking and career testing. So you will meet people in a volunteer experience that you might never have rubbed elbows with otherwise. So a CEO of a Fortune 500 company could be volunteering at the same church that you go to, or food bank, or clothing drive, or something like that. You might not get a chance to meet these people in the break room or at your office, but you would be able to kind of connect with them on this common ground if you are volunteering at the same place. You can also meet people outside of your field. So the reason I got on a school board was I was connected with a woman who runs the school through a volunteer opportunity. And then we met and we connected, and kind of I learned about opportunities to become a board of trustee. And then there we go. I'm on a school board, which I think is such an honor. And I never would have imagined that I would be doing that work, right? So you can meet people that you're in field with and out of field with. The other option is to kind of try before you buy. It's like unpaid internship mentality is what I call it. So sometimes I would work with IT professionals who had an idea of an area of IT that they wanted to go into, but there wasn't really a playground for them to do that work at their current organization, especially if it's something like cybersecurity or something that's very high stakes. So they could pivot and search for volunteer opportunities that might get them to work with those individuals that have those positions, or do that work themselves if they're skilled enough, depending, and try that out to see if they want to move forward with job seeking. Maybe they find out that's not for me, no way, or it's validated, yes, that's where I want to go with my job. And then the last kind of thing to think about is if there is an organization that you're volunteering with that you'd like to work for someday, you can observe the culture in a way that you wouldn't be able to do if you were just applying to a job and kind of looking at their website. they're going to give you the highlight reel, hopefully, on their media sections and their social media and all those things. But if you are actually working and volunteering, you can see how they talk to each other and how they treat each other and their clientele and their products and things like that. So that's another great way to kind of career test if you're interested in that. I think this is the final kind of bucket that I want to provide to you about how to incorporate these things. And that's all in the bucket of upskilling. So during the pandemic, this was a very large bucket of, there was a large bucket of individuals who couldn't necessarily commit to like a master's degree or some type of lofty tuition bill, but they needed to get skills somehow. So courses can be expensive sometimes, but there are other ways like volunteering where you can grab skills and again, keep that on your master resume in order to show a future employer that you've done these things. So confidence building, new people, they don't know you. You have no reputation with them yet in either direction. So that's kind of nice when you're starting new with someone. Leadership. So I used to work with a lot of people who were stuck, they felt, in their current role, and their manager might say, lead from your seat. Well, that's really hard to do sometimes, and it's hard to navigate and know what you have authority over versus what should be escalated to someone in a leadership role, etc. But when you are a leader on a project for volunteering, likely you're a very trusted person in that project. We're going to talk about Global Days in a second, and Allie might have even more to share about that. But if you are a project leader for Global Days of Service, you're a point of contact. You're someone, people have your phone number, they're texting you if they're going to be late, like there's a lot of coordination there. So if you don't have leadership experience and you might not be able to get it in your current job, volunteering could be a way for you to do that. Team building. So we kind of talked about this, working with different people from different walks of life, working on a team if you don't normally. So sometimes I would work with people who are freelancers, freelance graphic designers, or freelance marketing people. They might not work with a team all the time. They're a team of one. So a gap in their skill set is working with others in a collaborative environment as opposed to I'm a freelancer, let me give you this thing and you tell me if you like it or not. So team building, if you're not currently on a team, and then technical skills. I don't just mean computer skills here, although that falls under here, but I also mean tangible like fundraising, development, marketing, graphic design, website, those types of things. You might not get those experiences in your job because maybe another department does that, but in a volunteer experience, someone might love for you to come in and say, hey, can I, design some logos for your campaign or something like that. So you might be asking yourself like, okay, how do I get started? Or now that I have this information, how can I apply it to something tangible? Like what can I take from tonight? I think you can ask yourself a couple different questions. So focus on what you want to do. These are a bunch of questions you can ask yourself. So do I want to make my community better? Do I want to meet people who are different from me? Try something new? Do something I already know I'm good at? Maybe I just need to work on my confidence. Do something with my spare time. Maybe I only have nights. Maybe I only have weekends. Do you want to test out a job that you might someday want full time? So basically take an inventory of your wants. And it's really interesting to think of giving back, but starting with yourself. Like, what do I want to get out of this experience? And I hope that doesn't come across as the wrong way, but rather a different way to think about it. Because anytime I've started with my why, I've been able to give back better to the organization as opposed to that group looks cool or my friend's doing it or something like that. So start with yourself. And then the other group of questions to ask is, who do you know that? So who do you know already works with that group or that organization? LinkedIn is a great resource for that. who do I know that is involved in community service organizations like the SNHU Alumni Network? Who do we know? Who do I think about when I think about volunteering? Does someone's name come to mind that volunteers a lot? And then down the line. So asking yourself about your own personal network already. And if these questions are hard to answer, that's okay. But the internet is your friend. You can take career quizzes, personality quizzes. I have some down there that are really popular right now, and they have been for a little while. Plum 16 Personalities, My Next Move come to mind. You can also conduct a volunteer search just like you would a job search. Volunteer Match, Just Serve, United Way are all pretty solid national footprint websites. So if you want to search for marketing volunteer, if that's the why you have, the why I have is to get skills in marketing in a group that I could give back to, because that's meaningful to me too. Don't forget about the others that you'd be helping. If that's your why, then maybe your volunteer job search is marketing volunteer position, Manchester, New Hampshire, something like that. So think about it just like you would a job search. And then I think this is my last slide before my questions and discussion slide. But if you're looking for volunteer opportunities right now, I'm going to plug Global Days of Service again. The little clip I took of the website is a little smushed, but I wanted you to see all the different ways that you can get involved. So again, go back to your why. If your why is, I want to become a leader, or I want to sharpen my leadership skills, then maybe leading a project is the avenue you go down for Global Days of Service. If you want to be a member of a diverse team, maybe that's what you look at when you find a project. So when you click on all the big list of all the projects going on, you look at those. And then maybe you have your own idea that is in a totally different direction, and you share your story, and those hours count towards the collective. All that's good stuff. So right now, a tangible way to incorporate these pieces is Global Days of Service. It's this month and then all the way through April, I believe. But again, Allie's the expert and Becca's here too. So that's what I have for you. I hope it was helpful. There could have been a lot more to get into. So if there are questions in discussion, I'd love to have that. I think we have like 30 minutes, but we certainly don't need all that time. And I'd love to just hear like what's worked for you before. What might you try now that you've thought about it in this way? So any open-ended pieces like that. And I don't know if, Allie, if you want to stop the recording here and then folks can kind of share freely or whatever the case might be, but I'd love to just
Totally.
leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank
Let
you
me
for listening.